The funeral chapel fell silent as the honor guard presented the flag, until the German shepherd began barking at the coffin, refusing to stop. At first, everyone thought it was grief, but when the barking turned into a trained alert signal, something shifted. What the dog was desperately trying to communicate would uncover a disaster so catastrophic it would save every life in that room. Today, they were laying to rest Commander James Martins Blackwood, a decorated naval officer, a beloved husband and father, and a partner to one very special German shepherd. At the foot of the flag-draped casket sat Titan, James's loyal K9 companion. He wore his tactical vest with the words, "Explosive Detection Unit" stitched boldly across the side. The chapel was filled with military precision, rows of uniformed officers standing at attention, white lilies cascading around the polished mahogany coffin, and 7 honor guardsmen in dress whites flanking the fallen hero. But Titan didn't sit still. He let out a low whine, then a soft, controlled bark. At first, no one paid attention. They assumed he was just grieving, confused by the solemn ceremony and the absence of his handler's commanding voice. Rebecca Blackwood, James's widow, clutched their 6-year-old daughter Emma close, tears streaming as the chaplain spoke of sacrifice and service. Then Titan's behavior changed. He stood on all fours, ears pricked forward, eyes locked on the casket with laser focus. His tail went rigid, every muscle in his powerful frame tensing. His nose worked the air, nostrils flaring. Suddenly, he began barking, sharp, deliberate, echoing across the chapel like an alarm. People turned in their seats, uncomfortable, confused. An honor guard member stepped forward, reaching to calm him gently, but Titan wouldn't budge. Instead, he moved toward the casket with purpose, performing a precise sequence. Sit, stare, bark. His paws tapped at the base of the polished wood. Not frantic scratching, calculated signals. Whispered murmurs spread through the chapel like wildfire. "What's wrong with him? Someone control that dog." Poor thing's confused. Rebecca looked up, startled. In all their years together, she'd never seen Titan behave like this. His bark wasn't sorrow. It wasn't confusion. It was an alert. Commander Ryan Hayes, sitting 3 rows back, felt his blood run cold. He'd trained Titan himself 5 years ago in explosives detection. He knew that pattern. He knew that posture. The barking didn't stop. Officers began shifting uncomfortably at their seats. Some assumed it was the stress of loss, the weight of the moment. But to those who had worked with military K9s before, the veteran handlers scattered throughout the mourners. There was something unsettlingly familiar in the way Titan was reacting. It wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It was focus, training, discipline. The kind of unwavering alertness only a detection dog shows when he's locked onto something dangerous. Hayes stood slowly, his eyes never leaving Titan. The dog saw him, barked urgently, then returned to his alert position, sitting perfectly still, nose pointed at the lower section of the coffin, tail rigid, every instinct screaming one word: threat. And in that moment, as the chapel held its collective breath, Hayes understood with terrifying clarity. Titan wasn't mourning his fallen partner. He was trying to save everyone in that room. The military chapel stood like a sanctuary of grief and honor, its vaulted ceiling soaring above 200 uniformed officers who filled the polished wooden pews. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting soft colors across walls adorned with fallen heroes' names. At the front, A cascade of white lilies and baby's breath surrounded the altar, their fragrance mixing with the weight of silent sorrow that hung in the air like morning fog. The flag-draped coffin rested on a raised platform, the crisp red, white, and blue fabric perfectly aligned across the polished mahogany. Beneath the flag lay Commander James Martins Blackwood, his dress uniform visible through the open upper half of the casket. Ribbons and medals gleamed on his chest. The Navy Cross, the Purple Heart, campaign ribbons that told stories of valor in places most would never see. His hands were folded peacefully over his chest, his face composed in eternal rest, looking younger somehow without the burden of command weighing on his features. 7 honor guardsmen stood at attention on either side of the coffin, their dress white uniforms immaculate, their faces stone. Each held a rifle at present arms, the weapons angled precisely, not a single movement breaking their formation. They were statues of discipline, living monuments to the man they'd come to honor. At the foot of the casket, a German shepherd sat with military bearing. Titan wore his tactical vest, the words, "Explosive Detection Unit," stitched in bold yellow letters across the black fabric. His amber eyes were fixed straight ahead, his posture perfect, every inch the working canine who'd served alongside James for 6 years. A small patch on his vest showed his rank and unit number. Even in grief, he maintained his training. In the front row, Rebecca Blackwood sat with her daughter Emma pressed close against her side. Rebecca wore a simple black dress, her blonde hair pulled back, her eyes red and swollen from days of crying. Emma, only 6 years old, clutched a folded flag in her small hands, a junior version of the one draped across her father's coffin. Her pink dress seemed too bright for the occasion, but it had been James's favorite. She'd insisted on wearing it. "So Daddy can see me," she'd whispered that morning. The chaplain, a gray-haired Navy commander with kind eyes and weathered hands, stepped to the podium. The chapel fell into profound silence, the kind that only comes when hundreds hold their breath as one. "We gather today," he began, his voice steady and reverent, "to honor a man who gave everything in service to his country, his brothers and sisters in arms, and the family he loved beyond measure. Commander James Martins Blackwood was not just a sailor. He was a leader, a protector, a hero in every sense of the word." At the word hero, Titan's ears twitched. A low whine escaped his throat, barely audible but unmistakable to those sitting closest. His head tilted slightly, as if listening for a voice that would never answer again. Rebecca's hand tightened on Emma's shoulder. The little girl looked up at her mother with questioning eyes, then toward Titan, whose perfect posture had begun, almost imperceptibly, to shift. The chaplain's voice filled the chapel with memories of James's service, recounting missions in distant waters and the lives he'd touched. Officers bowed their heads, some dabbing at their eyes. Rebecca stared at the coffin, her jaw tight, holding back tears for Emma's sake. Then Titan stood abruptly. His movement was sudden enough that several officers in the front rows glanced over. The German shepherd's entire body language had transformed in an instant. His ears shot forward, radar-like, locked onto something invisible to human senses. His tail went rigid, horizontal to the ground, not the relaxed posture of a grieving dog, but the tense alertness of a working K9 on duty. His nose lifted, nostrils flaring as he worked the air with systematic precision. One sharp bark cut through the chaplain's words like a knife. The sound was controlled, deliberate, directed at the base of the coffin. Not a whimper of loss, not a howl of confusion, a bark with purpose. Heads turned throughout the chapel. Mourners shifted uncomfortably in their pews, exchanging uncertain glances. The chaplain paused mid-sentence, looking down at the dog with concern. An awkward silence spread like ripples on water. "Someone control that animal," Colonel Morrison hissed from the third row, his weathered face tight with disapproval. The senior officer's whisper carried further than intended, and several nearby officers nodded in agreement. One of the honor guardsmen, a young petty officer named Chen, broke formation slightly. He moved toward Titan with careful, gentle steps, reaching for the tactical vest's handle. "Easy, boy," he whispered, his voice soothing. "Come on now, let's give the commander his piece." Titan didn't even look at him. Instead, the dog planted his feet, legs locked, and pulled against Chen's gentle tug. His bark came again, sharper this time, more insistent. Then again. The measured intervals between each bark were too precise, too controlled to be random. 3 rows back, Commander Ryan Hayes sat up straighter, his eyes narrowing. He'd been James's closest friend since the Naval Academy, had served 2 deployments with him, and had been the one to train Titan years ago before transferring to another unit. He knew this dog, knew his temperament, his signals, his training. Recognition flickered across Hayes's face like lightning. His stomach dropped. Wait, that's not grief. Titan performed the sequence again, and Hayes's blood ran cold as he watched. The dog sat down abruptly, perfect form, tail rigid. His eyes locked onto a specific point on the coffin's lower edge. Bark, pause, bark, pause, bark. His nose pointed with unwavering focus at the same spot, as if marking it with invisible precision. Hayes's mind raced back through years of training exercises, countless drills. The muscle memory of commands and responses burned into both man and dog. That's his alert pattern. Explosives. The thought hit him like a physical blow. His hands gripped the pew in front of him. Around him, the murmurs were growing louder. "What's wrong with him? This is so disrespectful. Poor thing's just confused. Someone should remove him." But Hayes wasn't listening anymore. He was watching Titan with the trained eye of a K9 handler, counting the intervals, reading the body language, seeing what everyone else was missing. The dog wasn't mourning his partner. He was doing his job. Hayes stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Every eye in the chapel turned toward him. 200 officers watching as he stepped into the center aisle. The chaplain stopped speaking entirely, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. Hayes moved down the aisle with deliberate steps, his eyes never leaving Titan. He wasn't looking at a grieving dog anymore. He was reading signals, decoding behavior, watching for the patterns he'd spent years drilling into this animal's instincts. Titan saw him coming. The dog's ears swiveled toward Hayes, recognition flashing in those intelligent amber eyes. He barked urgently, once, twice, then performed the full sequence as if demonstrating for his former trainer. Sit. Lock focus on the target. Alert bark. Then his right paw lifted and tapped toward the coffin's base, the final confirmation signal Hayes had taught him half a decade ago. Hayes's blood turned to ice. A memory flashed through his mind. A younger Titan, barely 2 years old, bounding across a training field at Naval Station Norfolk. Hayes kneeling beside simulated explosive devices, guiding the eager dog's nose, rewarding the correct alerts. "Good boy. Now show me, sit, focus, let me know." over and over until it became instinct, until the pattern was so deeply ingrained that Titan would perform it even under the worst stress, even in chaos, even at his handler's funeral. Hayes reached the front of the chapel and dropped to one knee beside Titan. He placed a firm hand on the dog's head, feeling the tension vibrating through the muscular frame. "Show me, boy," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "Show me where." Titan moved immediately, as if released from a spring. He padded to the coffin's base with purpose, positioning himself at the lower right section directly beneath where James's polished boots would rest. He sat in perfect form, back straight, tail rigid, nose pointed with absolute precision at one specific spot. No deviation, no wavering. The textbook explosive detection alert that Hayes had seen hundreds of times in training but never, ever wanted to see in reality. The dog's unwavering focus sent a chill down Hayes' spine that had nothing to do with the chapel's air conditioning. Hayes straightened slowly, his mind racing through protocols, through possibilities, through the horrifying implications. His voice, when it came, cut through the chapel like a blade, hard, commanding, leaving no room for argument. "Everyone needs to stay calm. This dog is alerting to explosives." The gasps came instantly. Sharp intakes of breath echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Officers half rose from their seats. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth, her face draining of color. Emma looked up at her mother, confused and frightened by the sudden change in the room. "That's impossible," Colonel Morrison barked, standing and pointing an accusatory finger at Hayes. "Commander, you're disrupting a solemn ceremony with—" "I trained this K9 for 6 years," Hayes interrupted, his voice brooking no disagreement. His eyes remained locked on Titan, who hadn't moved a muscle from his alert position. "He's been certified for explosive detection in 3 theaters of operation. He's logged over 400 successful alerts in his career." Hayes finally looked up, his gaze sweeping across the stunned mourners. "He has never, not once, given a false alert. Something is in that coffin." The chapel erupted into chaos. Officers shot to their feet, chairs scraping, voices overlapping in confused alarm. Rebecca pulled Emma tight against her chest, her daughter's small body trembling. The honor guard broke formation, weapons shifting uncertainly as they looked between Hayes, the coffin, and their commanding officer. Colonel Morrison's face flushed crimson. He stepped forward, his voice sharp with authority. "Commander Hayes, this is highly inappropriate." "Sir, with respect," Hayes interrupted, his tone ice-cold and unwavering. "If Titan is alerting, there is an explosive device in this chapel." The funeral director, a thin man in an ill-fitting suit, rushed forward from the side entrance, his hands fluttering uselessly. "We can't just— There's protocol. The family." His voice cracked with panic, words tumbling over each other. Hayes turned away from them both, his eyes finding Rebecca in the front row. She sat frozen, one arm wrapped around Emma, the other pressed against her mouth. Her blue eyes were wide with terror and confusion, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "I'm sorry," Hayes said, his voice gentler now but no less certain. "But I need you to trust me. Trust James. He trained Titan to save lives. That's what he's doing right now." Rebecca stared at him for 3 heartbeats. Then she looked down at Titan, still sitting in perfect alert position at the coffin's base, every muscle taut with purpose. She saw in that moment what Hayes saw, not a confused animal, but a working dog doing exactly what James had taught him. "James trusted you," she whispered, her voice breaking, then louder through her tears. "Open it." Morrison stepped between Hayes and the coffin, his jaw set. "This is a violation of—" "Sir." Hayes's voice cut through the air like a whip crack, years of command authority compressing into a single word. "We have 200 people in this room." He gestured at the packed pews, at the officers now standing, uncertainty rippling through their ranks. "I'm opening that coffin." The security detail moved forward, hands hovering near sidearms, their faces tight with confusion. No training had prepared them for this. Hayes wheeled on them, his voice rising to fill every corner of the chapel. "That's an order. Clear this space and open the casket now." Titan barked again, urgent, desperate, and began pawing at the polished wood. Not frantic scratching, but deliberate taps, each one marking the same spot with unwavering precision. Officers throughout the chapel started standing, nervous energy crackling like electricity through the crowd. Someone near the back shouted, voice cracking with fear, "If there's a bomb, why are we still here?" The question triggered movement. Bodies shifting toward the exits, feet shuffling, the beginning of panic. "Nobody moves until we confirm," Hayes roared, his arms spread wide. "Panic kills more than explosives. Stay calm. Stay in your seats." His eyes locked on Morrison. "Sir, please." Two honor guard members stepped forward with the funeral director, their hands visibly trembling as they approached the casket. The director fumbled with the clasps, his fingers slipping twice before finding purchase on the ornate brass mechanisms hidden beneath the flag's edge. The coffin lid released with a sharp metallic click that echoed through the chapel like a gunshot. Titan's barking stopped instantly. He sat at rigid attention, every muscle in his powerful frame coiled tight as steel cable. His amber eyes locked forward with absolute focus. He'd delivered his warning. Now he waited. The lid lifted slowly, the hinges whispering against the sudden, suffocating silence. Officers pressed forward despite themselves, craning to see. Rebecca held Emma's face against her shoulder, shielding her daughter's eyes. James lay in perfect repose. His dress uniform was immaculate, crisp white fabric pristine against the coffin's cream-colored silk lining. Medals gleamed on his chest in neat rows, the Navy Cross catching the filtered sunlight, the Purple Heart's gold border sharp against deep purple. His hands were folded peacefully over his chest, fingers interlaced. His face held the serene expression of eternal rest, younger somehow, free from the weight of command he'd carried in life. Hayes leaned in carefully, his trained eyes scanning every detail. At first, there was nothing. Just a decorated officer laid to rest with dignity and honor, exactly as it should be. Then he saw it. A slight bulge beneath the uniform jacket near James's left side. Something that didn't belong. Something that disrupted the perfect symmetry of the presentation. Hayes's breath caught in his throat. His hands moved with deliberate slowness, steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. He lifted the edge of James's jacket, peeling back the white fabric with surgical precision. The gasps turned to screams. There, nestled against James's ribs like some obscene mechanical parasite, was a military-grade explosive device. Black casing, compact and professional. Wires red and blue, snaking across its surface in deliberate patterns. And in the center, an LED display glowing with cruel digital precision. 417, 416, 415. The numbers ticked down with mechanical indifference. Hayes's voice cut through the rising panic, deadly calm, each word precise. "We have 4 minutes. Evacuate now." Pandemonium exploded through the chapel. Chairs overturned with crashes that echoed off stone walls. Officers shouted orders over each other, voices competing for authority. Families scrambled toward exits, children crying, adults pushing through narrow aisles. The honor guard abandoned their posts, rifles clattering as they ran. The funeral director fled without looking back. "Bomb disposal!" Hayes roared over the chaos, his command voice cutting through. "I need EOD here immediately. Someone call the bomb squad." Officers fumbled for phones. Radios crackled to life with urgent transmissions. Feet pounded against hardwood floors in desperate rhythm. Through it all, Titan didn't move. He remained in perfect alert position at the coffin's base, having completed his mission exactly as James had trained him. His duty done, he waited with the patient discipline of a soldier who understands his role in saving lives. The timer continued its merciless countdown. 3:47, 3:46, 3:45. Military precision took over instantly. Senior officers positioned themselves at exits, directing traffic with sharp hand signals and barked commands. The evacuation transformed from chaos into controlled urgency. 200 people flowing through doors in organized streams rather than crushing stampedes. Rebecca scooped Emma into her arms and ran, the little girl's pink dress a bright flash against the dark uniforms surrounding them. Officers formed protective corridors, ensuring families evacuated first, maintaining order even as terror clawed at their discipline. Hayes stayed. He stood alone at the coffin, his eyes fixed on the device, examining every wire, every connection, every component without daring to touch. His mind cataloged details with the detached precision of a man who knew this could be his last act. His radio crackled to life. "EOD is 7 minutes out. Repeat, 7 minutes." Hayes keyed the radio without looking away from the bomb. "We don't have 7 minutes. I'm going in." "Commander, wait for the team." He switched off the radio. The memory hit him unbidden. 20 years ago, fresh out of the academy, sitting in a cramped classroom at Eglin Air Force Base. His brief rotation through EOD training before specializing in K-9 operations. An instructor's weathered hands demonstrating basic defusal techniques on training devices. Remember, gentlemen, every bomb tells a story. Read it before you touch it. The timer glowed with merciless certainty. 2:43, 2:42, 2:41. The chapel stretched empty behind him, vast and silent except for the faint ticking that might have been the device or might have been his imagination. He was alone with James's body, with Titan still maintaining his alert position, and with a live bomb counting down to devastation. Hayes forced his breathing to steady. His hands hovered over the device, eyes tracing the construction. C4 explosive, professionally packed. Pressure-sensitive backup trigger. He could see the small plates beneath the main casing. The wireless detonator had been disabled. That's why they'd switched to a timer. Someone wanted this to look like equipment failure, not assassination. Then he saw it. A folded piece of paper, tucked carefully beneath the device's edge, barely visible against James's uniform. His heart hammered against his ribs. Carefully, impossibly, painfully carefully, Hayes extracted the paper. His fingers trembled as he unfolded it, recognizing the handwriting before his eyes could focus on the words. James's distinctive scrawl filled the small page. If you're reading this, they got me, and they're trying to finish it. Check the blue wire. It's a decoy. Red wire has the secondary charge. Trust Titan. I loved you all. J. Hayes's eyes burned with tears that blurred his vision. His throat constricted around words that wouldn't come. James had known, had written this insurance policy with steady hands, knowing someone would plant this device, knowing Titan would alert, knowing Hayes would be the one standing here reading his final message. His best friend's last act had been protecting them all. The timer mocked his grief. 1:15, 1:14, 1:13. Hayes wiped his eyes roughly and leaned over the device, James's warning echoing in his mind. Hayes's training seized control of his trembling hands, forcing them steady despite the countdown burning in his peripheral vision. He identified the main power source, a compact lithium cell wired to the primary circuit board. His eyes tracked the connections, following James's instructions like a map through a minefield. Titan watched in silence, faithful sentinel at his post, amber eyes reflecting the LED's cold glow. The radio crackled one final time before Hayes had switched it off. Hayes, EOD is 3 minutes out. Get out of there. He'd keyed the mic with his shoulder. Can't. If this goes, it'll take out half the building structure. Evacuees are still too close. The timer mocked his resolve. 0:47, 0:46, 0:45. Hayes positioned his wire cutters over the red wire, the one James had specifically mentioned. But his hand hesitated, hovering in midair. Something felt wrong. Some instinct honed through years of partnership with James Blackwood was screaming at him to stop and think. He reread the note, his eyes scanning desperately through blurring tears. Trust Titan. A memory surfaced through the adrenaline fog. Bosnia, 2015, a classified operation gone sideways. James had left breadcrumbs for extraction, clues hidden in plain sight, using their shared academy code. Never direct, always layered. If I tell you to go left, Ryan, check right first. Hayes's breath caught. Red wire has the secondary charge. Not cut the red wire, not avoid the red wire. Understanding flooded through him like ice water. The red wire was the secondary explosive trigger. Cutting it would complete the circuit, detonate the backup charge instantly. James wasn't telling him which wire to cut. He was warning him which wire would kill him. The blue wire. The one that looked like a decoy. The one any EOD tech would dismiss as a false lead. Classic James, hiding the truth in plain sight. 0:18, 0:17, 0:16. Hayes's hands moved with desperate precision, switching the cutters to the blue wire. No time for second guessing, no time for doubt. Trust the fallen. Trust the friend who'd saved his life a dozen times before and was doing it one last time from beyond death itself. 0:12, 0:11. One clean cut. The wire separated with a tiny snick that sounded like thunder in the vast silence. The timer froze at 0:9. Hayes couldn't breathe, couldn't move. His eyes locked on those 9 glowing digits, waiting for them to resume, waiting for the world to end in fire and concussion. Silence. Then the LED display flickered once and went dark. The device was dead. Hayes collapsed against the coffin, his forehead pressing against the polished wood, his hand finding James's folded hands beneath the jacket. His shoulders shook with silent sobs, adrenaline draining from his system in waves that left him hollow and trembling. "You brilliant bastard," he whispered through tears. "Even dead, you saved us all." Titan finally moved, breaking his alert position for the first time. The German Shepherd pressed his solid weight against Hayes's leg, a warm presence in the cold aftermath of terror, offering the only comfort he knew how to give. The EOD team burst through the chapel doors in full protective gear, moving with practiced urgency toward the coffin. Their team leader, a grizzled master chief with 20 years of experience, approached the device with careful reverence. His gloved hands examined Hayes's work, tracing the cut wire, checking connections, running a portable scanner over the components. He straightened after 2 minutes that felt like hours. Device is neutralized. Clean defusal. His eyes found Hayes with something approaching awe. "You cut the right wire, Commander." The red would have triggered the secondary charge instantly. Outside, officers gathered in tight clusters on the chapel lawn, evacuees still catching their breath, families clutching each other in the aftermath of terror. Hayes emerged into the sunlight, Titan at his side, James's letter clutched in his shaking hand. Rebecca stood at the front of the crowd, Emma still pressed against her hip. Her eyes found Hayes, questioning, desperate for understanding. Hayes's voice carried across the assembled mourners as he unfolded the letter completely. There was more, much more than the brief defusal instructions. He began reading aloud, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. The letter explained everything in James's precise, methodical handwriting. He'd discovered illegal weapons trafficking operating within their unit, a conspiracy that reached into the highest ranks. High-ranking officers were systematically selling military-grade explosives to criminal organizations, using deployment logistics to mask the theft. Serial numbers filed off, manifests altered, entire shipments disappearing into black markets. James had confronted them 6 weeks before his death. 2 days later, his vehicle had suffered brake failure on a mountain road. The accident report had been filed quickly, quietly, with no investigation. But James had anticipated his murder. He'd left breadcrumbs, documentation, evidence scattered in places only those closest to him would think to look. The conspirators had panicked when they learned about the funeral arrangements. Too many witnesses, too many officers who'd served with James, who might ask questions, who might start connecting dots. Hayes, who knew James's habits and codes. Rebecca, who might have access to documents James had hidden. Even junior officers who'd heard whispers, seen irregularities. "Make it look like a terrorist attack," James had written. "Bury the evidence with the witnesses, clean slate." James had managed to smuggle the letter into his own coffin during preparation, bribing a funeral home assistant with information about where to find his full evidence cache. He'd known Titan would alert. Known Hayes would be the one to read this. Known his death could still save lives. The letter named names with devastating precision. Colonel Morrison, Captain Richard Vance, Captain Sarah Chen, and Marcus Idelson, a civilian contractor with DoD credentials who'd been present at the funeral, sitting 3 rows from the back. Security was already reviewing chapel footage on tablets. The contractor had been captured on camera approaching the coffin alone during the viewing period the previous evening. 3 minutes of unsupervised access. 3 minutes to plant death meant for 200 people. Hayes looked up from the letter, his eyes finding Morrison in the crowd. The colonel's face had gone white as bone. "Take them into custody. Now." Morrison bolted. He made it 5 steps before 3 junior officers tackled him to the manicured grass, his dress white staining with dirt and grass as he struggled uselessly against younger, stronger hands. The chaplain stood nearby, his weathered face stricken with understanding. He knew, the old man whispered, his voice breaking. He knew they'd kill him, and he still protected us. 3 weeks later, the military chapel filled again, but this time sunlight streamed through the stained glass with something approaching hope rather than sorrow. 237 lives had been saved. Every person who'd stood in that room when Titan first raised his alert. They returned now not as mourners fleeing catastrophe, but as witnesses to honor properly restored. James was posthumously promoted to captain, awarded the Medal of Valor for his final act of service. The citation read like something from another era. Courage beyond death, sacrifice transcending the grave, a mission completed from beyond mortality itself. Rebecca stood with Emma at the front, both wearing black but with less weight in their shoulders now. Truth had a way of lifting burdens even grief couldn't erase. The Navy secretary, a silver-haired admiral with campaign's ribbons covering his chest, presented the flag properly this time. The crisp triangle of red, white, and blue folded with ceremony and genuine reverence, not the hollow ritual corrupted by conspiracy. Titan sat beside them in a new vest, this one gold-trimmed with gleaming letters. Lifesaver, Hero K9. His posture remained military perfect, but something in his amber eyes seemed gentler now, as if understanding that his mission was complete. The secretary's voice carried across the assembled crowd, strong and clear. Commander Blackwood's courage didn't end with his death. Through meticulous planning, unwavering dedication, and absolute trust in his K9 partner, he ensured his final mission would save the lives of 237 people. His legacy isn't just in the trafficking ring we've dismantled or the justice we've served. It's in every person standing here today. Titan was awarded the Medal of Military Merit for Animals, the highest honor a K9 could receive. A young petty officer fastened the medal to his vest with hands that trembled slightly, overcome by the solemnity of decorating a hero who couldn't understand awards but had understood duty perfectly. Rebecca knelt beside Titan, her hand gentle on his broad head. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice held steady. James always said you'd protect us. He was right. He was always right about you. Emma wrapped her small arms around Titan's neck, burying her face in his fur. Daddy's still keeping us safe, isn't he, Mommy? Rebecca's voice broke. Yes, sweetheart. Through Titan, he always will be. Titan retired from service that day, going home with the family he'd saved. Not just from the bomb, but from never knowing the truth. 6 months later, Rebecca stood in the cemetery, autumn leaves drifting across manicured grass. Titan lay beside James's headstone, his medal still affixed to his vest, though gray was beginning to touch his muzzle now. The stone bore a new inscription beneath James's name and rank. He protected even beyond death. Rebecca placed fresh flowers, white lilies, James's favorite, and scratched behind Titan's ears the way her husband used to. The dog's eyes remained fixed on the grave, patient and unwavering, still standing guard, still faithful to the partner who'd trusted him with everything. They said it was impossible. Rebecca whispered to the stone, to the wind, to the memory of the man she'd loved, that a dog couldn't understand. But Titan knew. He knew your last mission wasn't over. Titan's tail thumped once against the grass. Acknowledgement, agreement, or simply the contentment of a soldier still serving, even in peace.